Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day. Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day.
Go to mymetalogic.com. On the top left, click on Subscribe. Click on Subscribe now. You are now on the card page of Metalogic subscription. Quantity refers to number of months. Change it to from 1 to 12. Click on Update card. The subscription amount will be calculated on number of months selected. For 1 month, it is 500 rupees. For 12 months, it is 6,000 rupees. Click on Proceed to check out. Fill the billing details and click on Place Order. Now you can choose your mode of payment. You have just made a right choice. Thank you for subscribing to mymetalogic.com.
Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day. Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day. Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day. Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day. Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day. Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day.
Go to mymetalogic.com. On the top left, click on Subscribe. Click on Subscribe now. You are now on the card page of Metalogic subscription. Quantity refers to number of months. Change it to from 1 to 12. Click on Update card. The subscription amount will be calculated on number of months selected. For 1 month, it is 500 rupees. For 12 months, it is 6,000 rupees. Click on Proceed to check out. Fill the billing details and click on Place Order. Now you can choose your mode of payment. You have just made a right choice. Thank you for subscribing to mymetalogic.com.
Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day. Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day.
The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line.
Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day.
Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Monica Bachchan. I'm a founder of Metalogic Projects Management Services. It is a maximum women staff organization. Today on 28th of October 2021, we are presenting you webinar on Indian ports for bulk raw material and steel sponsored by JSW Infrastructure. This is our 40th webinar during COVID-19 pandemic. I hope you have gained an insight from our last webinar on metallurgical coke for Indian steel held on 8th October. The recording of that webinar is available on our YouTube channel. Please visit to youtube.com/metallogicpms for the recording. Do not miss to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Viewers, I like to make a mention that Metalogic has come up with a new portal, mymetalogic.com. So all the webinars have been documented in a report format. So all the recordings and the reports of the webinars are available on mymetalogic.com. Please do not miss to subscribe at 500 rupees per month basis. This program is currently live on our YouTube channel. Viewers who are facing any difficulty through GoToWebinar software can view the webinar on on YouTube. Just a short housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the panel discussion, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll bring them up during the presentation and we will also have time for questions at the end. Always mention your company name and organization which you are representing and who would you like to address your question to. We will also have time for audience poll, which are always exciting. So please watch the program very carefully until the end because your vote matters. I'd like to make an announcement that last week Metalogic has launched a book, Metallurgical Coke Making in India 2021, written by Mr. Tarun Chatterjee. If you like to make a purchase of books related to steel, mining, or iron, you can visit to mymetalogic.com and make your purchases. Today we have an expert panelist, Mr. Santosh Kumar Mohapatra, IAS, retired, advisor and consultant, former chairman, director of Paradip, Dhamra, Vizhimjam ports. Mr. Vinit Kumar, chairman, Syama Prasad Mookerjee Port. Mr. Arun Maheshwari, joint managing director and CEO of JSW Infrastructure. Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, operating partner, infrastructure, Essar, and MD of Essar Ports Limited. We have Mr. Dhruv Kotak, managing director of JM Baxi Group. Just give me a moment. This program, are you able to see the screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see. So this program has been divided into 5 parts. The first part, we will be discussing on current conditions and future of Indian ports. The second part, we will be discussing on regional supply chains to boost iron and steel trade. The third part will be on new technologies. In fourth part, we will be discussing on coastal shipping. And on part 5, we will be discussing on customs. I'm unmuting all the panelists now. Mr. Dhruv, you can also unmute yourself. We are starting the panel discussion. So with part 1, I'm raising the first question to our panelists. What have been the key trends and development in the port sector supporting Indian iron and steel industry? The first question is, what have been the key trends and developments in the port sector supporting Indian iron and steel industry? We will start with Mr. Arun Maheshwari, then we will have comments from Mr. Santosh Mohapatra. After that, we will hear from Mr. Dhruv Kotak and then Rajiv Agarwal. Mr. Vinit will be joining us at 3:45 p.m. Sir.
Monica, we welcome Mr. Vinit Kumar. He's already there now on the screen.
He's already there.
Hello, Mr. Vinit. Okay. Arun sir, let's start, please.
So thanks, Monica, for this kind introduction, and welcome to all the known faces and very, very learned panel we have today. So coming from the steel and industry background, so probably I can start this dialogue. Of course, port plays a key role for in Indian context because India has to import naturally one of the key raw materials for steel making. So Indian ports are I always felt, being a raw material head earlier in the steel making, I always felt port is also a part of the raw material. You cannot separate port other than the raw material, because if ports are not capable enough to handle the material, we will not be able to supply to the steel industry, and the steel industry won't be able to produce the material. So that's how we link it, and that's what JSW has thought all through, that we should have key ports for securing our supply chain management. Nothing. It was the originality. It started with that the entire supply chain management has to be intact under our control, and that's where the investment in Goa or in the Dharamtar or Jaigarh or Paradip and other places started. So I would say that steel industry is benefited by the port industry, and it is a key part of their overall supply chain management. So rest, I'll request other panelists to throw some light on that.
Santosh sir, you have seen the trends. I like to know from you, what key trends have you noticed till now?
I was in Paradip between 1997 and 2003, and having gone back to Gujarat, my cadre, I came back as the founding CEO of Dhamra. I should think the best thing that has happened during these last 15 years is the coming up of 3 new ports on the eastern coast, all catering to steel industry in India and also to the iron ore mining. These 3 ports are Dhamra, Gangavaram, and Krishnapatnam. What was unique about these 3 ports is that they are all 18 plus meter deep, who could handle cape-sized vessels. They suit the complacence of the major ports like Visakhapatnam, Paradip, and even Haldia, Kolkata. And all these ports started trying to depend whatever they could, their own ports, like Paradip depended to 14.5 meter and started getting 90,000 tons. So similarly, Visakhapatnam, both the ports started constructing either directly or through PPP outer harbors with at least 16 meter depth, so that they could handle the cape-sized vessels, 120,000 tons. And even Kolkata Haldia port, who couldn't have further depended, in fact, maintaining the existing depth is already challenged in Kolkata. They even started thinking of transloading operations through which they can handle cape-sized or super cape-sized vessels, although that led to some conflict between Dhamra and Kolkata. But what is important is that they also try to come out of their complacence and improve the efficiency of their ports. This was a very welcome development that happened as far as the port sector is concerned in relation to the mining and steel industry.
Right, sir. Mr. Dhruv, over to you.
Yeah, I think, for me, if I look at the biggest development, I mean, first of all, I'm surrounded by real luminaries, because I think, just to remind Santosh sir, I think the first major port I visited as a young kid, my father sent me to Paradip. And the first chairman of any major port I had met was Santosh sir in Paradip. And that chamber in Paradip, Vinit sir, you've been sitting on that chair briefly in between also. That was the same chamber I visited in the year 99 as a young boy, and I met Santosh sir. That brings a lot of memories, sir. Nice seeing you again, sir, after a long time. But I think just adding, and I think whether it's Rajiv sir, whether it's Arun sir, I think we've seen a huge trend, and I would say in terms of economies of scale, both, the same way when I look at what Arun sir mentioned, that the port is also a raw material technically for the steel industry. I'm seeing economies of scale and the degree of mechanization which has happened, both major and minor ports. And of course, when I look at Dhamra and I look at some of the innovations that, Santosh sir had designed in Dhamra originally, I think that was, tremendous, whether it was how the railways was handled or whether how the port was planned or the mechanization was planned. And this huge degree of mechanization, both in terms of rail handling as well as in terms of port handling, I think that's one of the huge developments which have happened in India, both in terms of productivity as well as in terms of handling. So just to add, I didn't want to add the same points that Arun sir and Santosh sir made, but for me, I think mechanization across major and minor ports has been a huge factor. So yeah, That's what I'd say.
Rajiv, sir, over to you, sir. What trends have you seen, sir?
See, we at Essar, we have been the pioneers of the port industry for user industries like steel, power, refining, and we believe that we have to achieve scale, and if we have to achieve the proper costs, then we need to have deep draft ports. So we at Hazira, we used to have a shallow draft port where we used to handle about 10 million tons by lightridge at one time in the 90s. And then we developed a deep draft port there, dredging about 10 kilometers of the channel to 14 meters. Now we can handle 14 to 16 meters draft ships there. And we have completely mechanized. We handle about 30 million tons of cargo, and we developed in Paradip and in Vizhimjam very good facilities. And I think coastal shipping also was started by Essar. And we, even at our refinery, we used to handle, VLCCs, 360,000 tonners. So we believe that logistics and ports can bring big competitive edge to the industry. And India has seen in the last 10 years these trends where increasingly people with the scale, because now, like if you look at JSW, they're looking at going to almost 40 million tons in some few years. And, the entire industry is consolidated and huge. This one industry, which I would say will double in the next 4 or 5 years. And it will bring huge requirements of handling large quantities of cargoes and at a good rate. Like if you look at Vale's port in Brazil, you can load up to 200 to 50 million tons of cargo in a year. I've seen that terminal, and it's a beautiful terminal. It can handle 4 capes at one time, and they can be loaded in one day. And so that's the scale, and it's just some planning needed, nothing so shattering. There is no great new technology or anything. It's just that you have to have proper mechanization, storage, and logistics, and draft, so which all of us understand. And it's just that we have been working and we have been doing, I think a lot of good work has been done at our major ports, at individual ports of the users, because today large industries cannot, they have to have control over their logistics.
Right, sir.
Otherwise, they cannot function. So this is what I feel.
That's right, sir. Vinit, sir, what is your view, sir? Requesting you please unmute your mic, sir.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all the panelists. I met, I think, except Mr. Mohapatra, I have met everybody. And I have
Yes, sure, we all know.
The privilege of being at Paradip for a few months, which is a very enriching experience. Now, I think when you are asked to speak in the end, there is hardly any point left with such luminaire being asked to speak before you. But I'd say only 2 things. That one is that the Government of India policy towards steel of scaling the steel production in the country by 2030, right, from 100 to 300 million tons, has been percolated to all the ministries concerned, be it shipping, be it railways, be it roads. So there is a very clear focus that the steel industry has to grow, size, and the associated infrastructure and the systems have to be put in place. So from the government side, that is a very clear thing. And on the lines of those, the Ministry of Shipping had done an elaborate exercise in the last year and made out a vision document, which is called Maritime India Vision 2030, wherein this all has been factored in, and all the ports and associated infrastructure, be it railways, etc., everything has been planned at various ports, terminals, everything, and also the new ports which are about to come. So that planning part has already been done, and it is now being executed and being monitored. another observation, I feel that while we have in the steel industry, we have been focusing on the imports. And of late, we are finding that we are capable of exporting quite a lot of steel. So while we have capacities in input imports, and we are also augmenting the capacity in the import side, I think there is a need for us to focus a little more on the export side. So I find that at times there are, we face constraints as regards movement, also as regards on the shipping side, also means the work side also. So we have probably that is one area which is a little bit out of sight. So when we are going for 300, we should also plan as to, from where we are going to export, what all linkages we should have, which all berths will be used. I think that's one area which is, to my understanding, needs a little more focus and a little more action. So
absolutely,
these are the 2 points I wanted to make. Thank you.
So audience, I'm raising the first poll question. The focus should be on your screen now. My first question is, what are the key issues related to Indian ports? You have got 4 options. One is asset monetization and consolidation. Your second option is last mile connectivity. Third option is inadequate port infrastructure. Or fourth option is digitization and automation. So what are the key issues related to Indian ports, do you think? And after the audience answer, I will seek the comments from the panelists. What are the key issues related to Indian ports, asset monetization and consolidation, last mile connectivity, inadequate port infrastructure, digitization and automation? And people who are watching this program on YouTube can comment your answers in the comment section. Okay, so we have got the results. Results on your screen. So the majority is going 37% on inadequate port infrastructure. 37% of our audience feels. Then 30% is towards digitization and automation. 24% says last mile connectivity, and only 9% says asset monetization and consolidation. So the majority is going towards inadequate port infrastructure, digitization and automation. We have seen the results now. I would like to request for the comments from, we will start on a reverse order. We will start from Mr. Vinit, then Mr. Rajiv. After that, Mr. Santosh, Arun, Maheshwari ji, and then Dhruv, Kotak. Vinit ji.
The 2 points which take the majority share is the inadequate port infrastructure and the last mile connectivity. So these are
digitization and automation. Sorry.
Yeah, digitization and automation also. So yeah. The point number 2 and 3 belongs to infrastructure side. That is the hard infrastructure part of it. I think there is enough being done all across the major ports to augment the capacity and also to improve the connectivity. Very recently, you must be aware that the Gati Shakti program has been launched by Honorable Prime Minister, wherein the various ministries are bringing all the connectivity programs on one platform. That is for better coordination and also better planning, so that no two departments are not working toward the same thing. So these things are in the focus, and but of course one area, that is digitization and automation, I would say that while it has taken its due place in the container side, it is a very valid point that digitization and automation has not reached the status it should reach on the bulk side. So it's an area where there is a need for all of us to focus. I fully agree with that. It's a very valid point. Because in container business we have a lot of digitization, and everything is now coming on the automatic mode and on the e-platforms. But similar thing on the bulk side, there is a gap. I think there is a need to fill it up, as very rightly pointed out by them. So there is a need for that. Our infrastructure part, I feel that infrastructure area, adequate capacity is being created, and maybe there is a mismatch somewhere. What you need is not there, or that is there a couple of places, but that is also under consideration, and very shortly that will also be taken care of. But yes, automation and digitalization is an area in the bulk transportation which is still not got its due attention, and we need to give attention to that.
Right, sir. Rajiv, sir, your comments, please.
Well, my thinking is that I think there is adequate infrastructure, like Vinitji pointed out. Most of the actual users, like steel industry people, either who are on the west coast have their own port capacities, and so basically they are the ones who have a greater need for import of moving in raw materials, etc. So infrastructure-wise, I don't see much of an issue with the port infrastructure. And also on the automation side, my feeling is that as a user, we have been operating steel industry, so we have not found, or as a port operator, we are fairly automated. In fact, largely automated, and everything is on a dashboard. We control everything, raw materials, finished goods, everything. I think there is a little bit of a challenge on the last mile connectivity. In my view, I think the intermodal system in India still doesn't work very well. So industries have created their own infrastructure in a very large way to take care of their own requirements. And but railway probably is one of the areas where we are looking for that last mile connectivity. As far as the sea routes are concerned, even for exports, in Essar we were very well equipped, and mostly it was being exported or even moved on the coast through the sea route wherever required. So I think we're quite comfortable on that. But I would say that on the last mile connectivity, there are some few things which could be done better.
Santosh, your point, sir.
I would like to speak about something the least number of people have voted for, and nothing has been talked about it. The asset monetization. We have a couple of concerns I think everybody has about this. One is cleaning up, meaning I hear Paradip is in the list of projects which are meant to be monetized. And it's a hugely profit-making port. And obviously, it shouldn't happen in case of ports or any other sector, that the good assets are monetized and the government is left with the bad old assets. That's my part. The other is, of course...
very valid point, sir.
And the other is, the fear of monopoly or duopoly. Because port is a sector we are not very open to global competition because of security reasons, etc. Every bidder has to be cleared by the Home Ministry and Defense Ministry. And therefore, it is limited to domestic operators. And one of the main advantages of privatization, which is that there should be healthy competition, will be lost if most of the ports belong to one or two parties to operate. These are the two concerns. And I would agree with Mr. Agarwal that last mile connectivity is a very important issue. I can say from my experience that I was building a rail connectivity of 60 kilometers for Dhamra, which is actually 110 track length. And Vinit, being from railways, would know better. It was so difficult to do it that sometimes I thought, am I building a port with a railway or a railway with a port at the end of? In fact, 2/3 of my time was spent in building that railway line, and only 1/3 was spent on building.
Santosh, sir, I totally agree with your points. Arun, sir, I'd like to know your view, sir.
Yeah. So, well said, Santosh sir. Interesting that, so I would say that port infrastructure, what they say that it is inadequate. I somehow, somewhere to an extent, I disagree with that. Because port infrastructures are sufficiently available. The only challenge is that backup is not there. to make the things available, or the efficiencies of the equipments are not in place. Like today, if you have to look at a particular berth, any berth for steel handling, if I have to look at it, what Vinit had rightly picked up, steel export is one of the key areas. And recently we have seen challenges in all the ports wherein the steel export was not happening because there was inefficiencies were there in the system. Because the systems, the people were not geared up to handle this kind of volumes. It is not that the berths were not capable or the ports were not capable of doing it. Those kind of equipments, those kind of mechanization, those kind of connectivity, those kind of backup of the railway or the roads, everything was not available. The storage area was not available. So how do you do that? So, a berth which can do about 10,000 tons a day of steel loading was on an average doing 3,000 to 4,000 tons a day. Now, infrastructure is there, the efficiencies are not there. So if you bring in efficiencies, probably the same asset can give you the better output. So I think more work is required for the efficiency part of it rather than building a new infrastructure altogether. I can tell you we'll find a day after 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, what happened to the power sector, that too much of power stations were there and there were no off-takers. And similarly will happen here. I said in one of the earlier programs also, that we'll have too many ports, but with inefficiencies creeping in, and everything will go, become an unviable option for us. So I think efficiency is one part which I would strongly push for it. It could be by mechanization, by modern equipment, by all kind of digitalizations, and last mile connectivity. Of course, it remains for any products, whether import or output. So I believe Mr. Dhruv Kotak can speak for hours on this, and especially on the digitalization side, because they have done really wonderful job on that side. So I reserve my comments to hearing from him.
Dhruv, sir, your take, please.
Very sweet, sir. But I think I'm just going to sum up what everyone has said, and I think what the panel is saying is we are actually completely contradicting what the public is saying. We believe that, and I agree with the panel, because I think the one which is the least is what I believe is the most critical, which is the monetization actually. And I agree with Santosh sir, it's about which assets are monetized. It depends, and if you look at a lot of capacity has already been created in different ports. If you look at it in terms of major ports, there's almost 2 billion tons of capacity in terms of waterfront. How do you translate that into something which is really useful, really efficient, and there to serve the right type of cargo mixes, the right type of requirements that hinterland has? Then you move one step further. After you do the monetization, you need to make sure that there's adequate amount of connectivity there, and make sure that you have adequate amount of evacuation or movement from the hinterland back into the ports. There has to be enough of capacity to plan for that. And have we really done that? Are we really doing that? And I think that's what Vinit sir also said, whether it's the Gati Shakti program or whether it's the overall planning that the government has between rail and road. Again, I think I would say that would be a second point. It would go hand in glove with the, I would say, asset monetization, upgradation program. I think digitization, automation, I think it's underway. I think there is, obviously there's always going to be improvement, and technology will move in that direction. And therefore, I come back to it. I think it's just the exact opposite is what I think this panel is saying, and I'm just topping it up and adding to it. I think, since Arun sir, you mentioned about digitization, I do see that there is actually a very interesting user set for, large industrial conglomerates, and whether it's in places like Brazil, the Vales of the world, but even in Indian giants like JSW, where I think there is a huge demand for I would say end-to-end digital offering that they can have. Maybe it's more internal, but to make sure that data flow where all stakeholders who are using, who are interacting with a JSW port or, providing a raw material. I think it's very important to have that digital fabric. It will enable, your partners, your suppliers to be far more efficient. And I think that is something where I think a lot of the industrial players who are already very efficient because of automation, I think application of a digital fabric across their entire ecosystem, I think is something which has not been covered in enough. I think we've done a lot of work around containers, but I think there's not enough of work which is done for the large industrials. And I think they can create even more efficiencies for themselves and for their partners. So I do think that's an area which there can be some degree of work which can be added. Maybe we can take that offline, Arun sir.
Sure, definitely, yes.
So I will move on to the next question, but before I move on, I do have a fear on asset monetization, because this is my personal view, that we may lose competition if all assets will go, one-sided. So moving on to the next question, what has been the overall impact of COVID-19 on the sector? Do you feel the sector has successfully made its way out of the pandemic? We'll start from Mr. Vinit. We will shuffle a bit. Then we will have Mr. Arun, Maheshwari, Mr. Santosh, Dhruv, and then Mr. Rajiv. Vinit sir, what has been the overall impact of COVID-19? Sir.
See, I'll say when I see that after the first wave, probably the steel sector was the first sector to come out of it. But we realized that after the first wave of COVID, steel sector was the first sector to quickly come out of it. That I must compliment the entire steel industry for it. So what we realized that one is that probably they have no choice. If they shut their plant, they take months again to restart it. So they had no choice. But I can tell you that in Haldia we handled cargo for Tata Steel and SAIL. And in Paradip we handle for JSW and others. And immediately after the first wave, the things were the first sector which came back to normalcy was the steel sector. So as far as good impact on this is concerned, I think that from that side, operation side, there has not been much of the impact. They have done successfully to take care of it. However, on the commercial side, the impacts of COVID are still, haunting on all of us. The styles, the charter hire rates, and are still very high. The inputs are still at very high cost, and it's not only high. There is a lot of volatility also as of now. So, which is affecting the input side of it, and also the changes happening in the international market regarding the steel cuts taken by one of the big countries, and so that volatility is still there. So that has some impact of whether we can attribute that to COVID, I'm not very sure. But that volatility part on the commercial side is still there. But as far as running of the steel industry is concerned, and the ports is concerned, we have fully come out of the COVID situation, which is absolutely normal operations as of now. Just having these challenges of the volatility on the sides of shipping and on the volatility on the side of rates of the inputs.
Right, sir. Arun sir.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Vinit Kumar that steel industry was the first one to bounce back and make the things work, and especially from the same industry and handling the ports largely which caters to steel industry. I believe the impact on the container side, Mr. Kotak would be the right person to elaborate more on that, because we are not into that segment so far. I felt we never faced much of challenges even during peak of COVID times in terms of volumes, in terms of efficiency, in terms of operations. We had a challenge of manpower side. More than 50% of the manpower was lost because they were moving around, they were going back to their natives, something. So those challenges were there. But then since most of our operations are very mechanized, so we didn't have those kind of challenges. Our evacuation model is not dependent on truck anywhere. It's almost 35% is by sea route, almost 70% or almost 60% is by rails, and only 5-7% is by trucks. So we had no challenges. The trucks had the major challenges for evacuation. The rails and the sea route was not a challenge. So probably as JSW, we had no challenges. But at the port industry, if I have to look at it, bulk material had no major challenges. the largely challenges came in from the container side, wherein the things were stuck at the user level, at the countryside. The trucks were not available. The CFSs were full. Exports were not happening. It was a global problem. So, so we are part of the chain. So it has impacted there. So in my view, I think port industry can be divided into two parts. One is bulk, one is container. So bulk, I don't see was a major challenge. Rather, it did slightly better because a lot of movement was happening. So I think it did better last year.
Santosh sir, I'd like to have your view. And before that, we have a message from one of your follower. I'll tell you, Mr. Ramakrishna Panda. He's saying, I'm very much proud to work under honorable command during his tenure at DPCL. Mr. Ramakrishna Panda, Marine Officer at DPCL, sir. Sir, now over to you. Your comments, please.
I suppose my co-panelists are better aware of what happened during COVID because they were directly operating the ports. But whatever reports I used to hear suggested that there wasn't really much disruption of activity in ports, except that when there are foreign crew, there are some issues about whether you should interact with them, or whether they should be allowed to come down from the sea. I mean, those are not very major issues. But yes, the cargo was affected, not so much because the port operation was reduced, but because mining operations during the first few months were little dislocated. And therefore, and also trucking was little dislocated. Some of the districts closed their boundaries from vehicles coming from other sides. So there was some disruption, but that didn't last many months. And even today, we have post-COVID effects like charter hire going up, etc. I think that is a very natural reaction to the piled up demand showing itself at the end of some kind of catastrophe. So I think this will also be short-lived. This will pass. I hope there is no third wave, and therefore we are out of it.
Right, sir. Rajiv, sir, what is your view on COVID-19 impact on the port industry, sir? Rajiv, sir.
Well, I think port industry did fairly well, and there was not even a day's disruption from our side. The largest cargo that we handle in our country is bulk. In bulk is liquids, and which was almost like a song because there is no real manual handling. So the liquids were, the refineries were operating, the liquids were coming in and out, and there was really no disruption at all. Next, like steel, again, we all managed pretty well. So most of the industries, I think bulk, on the bulk side, like whether liquids or, bulk, solid bulks were operating quite okay. Now, maybe because of geopolitical reasons and some COVID reasons, some disruption has taken place in the supply chains in the world, and some changes are happening. People, you can say with the China situation, this, that, and slow turnarounds, freight rates have gone up, commodity prices have gone up for several such reasons, coal prices have shot up. So these are things which are not just COVID, but other geopolitical issues. So a combination maybe. And I think, but the robustness of the demand, and we are lucky to be in our country where the demand has picked up. Initially, when steel started moving, oil started moving for in the initial months after COVID, first month or two months later, we were not sure whether this is a sustainable demand, but then it was very sustainable. In fact, there is some other shortages of, say, semiconductors, etc., which is affecting the automobile industry, which could impact a little bit on the steel side. But I think that also we will be able to take care. Then I think on the construction side, there is good pickup and there is good demand. Overall, in overall terms, there is good demand. So I don't think that India as such, we have been able to take care of most of the issues. Of course, like Vinitji pointed out, that the prices have gone up of most of the commodities, raw materials, and logistics costs and everything. But okay, that is some compensation for some time where industry may have lost money. So some money will be made by people so in the industry. So I don't see that also as a very unwelcome move. But I think in due course of time, things will settle down more on that disruption side. But otherwise, I think we see that, like Santosh said, that if the third wave doesn't come, then we are in a good situation.
I mean to this statement. Now, Dhruvji, I would like to know your take, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I think everything is already spoken, but I think we have to just realize that India has handled especially the Indian port sector has handled the COVID challenge a lot better than others. So, I mean, for example, I heard our panelists talk about the time during the first wave when things were stuck. They were, but we were able to unclog the system extremely quickly. And I think that's again a testament to our trailer operators, our crane operators, people who are actually on the ground, on the field, operating our equipment. So ठीक है, मैं मान सकता हूँ उस time काफी लोग गाँव भी चले गए. But I think the reality is that they came back also really quickly. And even if a lot of their fellow members had gone to the villages, these people were working, like 3 shifts non-stop, and just to get backlogs cleared. Now, yaar, USA jaiye, sir, wahan dikhai nahi dega ye. You will not see this in the US. You will not see this in Europe. And that's the reason why. That is why you will see that some of these congestions and problems have persisted in these economies for much longer.
I agree.
I think as far as India is concerned, and I think the success in the port sector, and I think Arunji is a luminary of the steel sector also. I'm sure everyone knows that, but
Dhruv, if you could touch upon on container part, which Mr. Arun Maheshwari was also saying you're the expert in that. So
yeah, so I'm actually talking about the container part only. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the container part of it has a larger input of manpower in our industry, right? I mean, today, a container port like Kolkata, it's got more manpower associated in and around it than a steel mill will have, much more. Because you have so many different users, so many different transporters, so many different CHs, warehousing contractors, and so on and so forth. So it's just a very, diverse, broad mix. And it's been those people who have been, really. It's the drivers, it's the restacker operators, it's the CHA boys who have kept things moving right throughout, and the efficiency level has been in some cases double, tripled despite limitations, and that's the reason India has not had such a huge problem compared to other economies. So I think frankly, shout out to all our. I don't want to use the word, but okay, blue-collar colleagues who are, driving our ports and our logistics businesses.
Right, sir. Vinit, sir, we have one question from Mr. Abdul Sheikh. He's asking that major ports in India is around 1,500 MMT, million metric ton, whereas the throughout is 671 MMT, that is the capacity utilization of 45%. This is mainly due to inefficient hinterland connectivity. How do we improve this? And are there any measures in place of initiatives from the government to increase the capacity utilization, sir?
Yeah, see, as I told you that there is already a plan to improve the capacity, and when we talk of enhancing the capacity, it is not all the hard infrastructure, but also the improvising the efficiency of these assets which are already there. So we are talking of more mechanization. We are talking of more efficient systems. I can give you an example. Like in Haldia, we operate, and we have partial mechanization. So there is a capacity, but it is partially mechanized. So it is semi-mechanized kind of system. Now we are coming up with a BUT which will very shortly, and it will be an end-to-end mechanization kind of thing. So new terminals are coming up in at the same place where we had the earlier BUT. Now new terminals are coming up which are mechanized. So the cargo handling capacity will, the TRT will come down. It will be able to handle more cargo in a lesser period of time. So it is, I think, that efficiency part which we are looking into to improvise upon this 45% to make it go up to whatever 40, 50, 55 to 60% in the first phase and later on up to 70, 75%. Also, the connectivity part, as I said, Gati Shakti is one area where the missing links, and whenever there are mismatches, as Arun has also pointed out that we need means where we have capacity, we should have the right linkages also. So that is also being planned and identified, and action is being taken upon on those points also. And third point is that the I understood in this sector that while they count the numbers on means the time and hours and the efficiency of our terminal, but if we see the processing of papers and all those things, that also takes the softer part also takes a considerable number of time. If you see from end-to-end logistics part, the softer part also takes considerable considerable time, which in turn reflects into the efficiency of the entire chain. From that point of view, the mechanization means the IT initiatives and the is very important, so that we can cut down on the paperwork time and improve this utilization of the assets. So already, as I told you, that action is going on in all 2-3 fronts to have better utilization of the existing capacity.
We have one question from Mr. Shusrut Mohanty. He has asked from YouTube actually. His question is, can the panelists share their views on the role of railway and their integration with ports be improved? We can have view of Mr. Rajiv, Mr. Arun, Maheshwari.
No, I think we discussed some time back that there is always a scope, and there is a big scope of having better connectivity between railway and ports. I think we can do better there. And as we all know, it's not so easy. It's easier said than done. So because of the land issues, the connectivity issues. So, but yes, the importance is of connecting rail to ports. It cannot be neglected at all. Yeah. And one more thing I would like to react that when maybe about 6-7 years back, the capacity utilization at major ports used to be 80, 85, 90%. And today, if it has come down, it shows our efficiency, not efficiency, because they are handling all the cargoes which are offered to them. Though I'm not saying things cannot be improved, turnaround times can be improved, and Vinitji has taken that thing and he has very positively replied to that. But I would say that they are handling all the cargoes which are being given to them, and they in ports, if your capacity utilization is lower, it shows that you have enough space to grow, and and there is less waiting time. So that way, I think we have improved in the last 4 or 5 years.
I'm going to jump in here. I think the solution actually is, what the ministry has done successfully is you need to have, very strong railway officers like Vinit Kumarjee, Mr. Rinkesh Roy, Mr. Haranan. These are all, we need to have more and more railway officers who are sitting there in the port also, especially in these crucial ports on the east coast of India. No, and I'm serious. It's actually needed, because the kind of coordination that they're able to do, they are actually able to increase the efficiency and some of the turnaround and some of the evacuation. And I'm sorry, I think Santosh ji won't like hearing this. Arun ji, you may not like hearing it, but there in many instances, their leadership is better than any private sector port also, simply because they are able to, create an integrated logistics solution much better than anyone else. Sorry, I know this is a very jugaad answer.
No, but that is one of the reasons why many of the people from railways are now heading ports, because there is a growing need for this improved connectivity. And they understand logistics.
Yeah, as what the last, poll which was asking about port infrastructure or connectivity and all those stuff. So everybody said that port infrastructure is inadequate, wherein it comes out, if the connectivity is proper, and what Dhruv, what you said, I 100% agree with you. The kind of efficiencies which has come in through the railways, getting into it. They understand the challenges. They understand the thing, which can improve the overall system. even railway needs a business, to and fro, and port can provide both the businesses. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. I think railways is a key, but the most important, the people who are handling the railways also is a key. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will move on to
can I say
Santosh,
something? We set up the first fully mechanized coal handling system in Paradip, which is also linked to railway. And I pleaded to have a deputy chairman who belongs to railway service. And I was opposed by the Department of Personnel that, look, we have kept it for an IS officer like you. I said, no, running this port with this kind of new facility needs a railway officer. And Subrat Tripathi, the first railway service officer, was posted in a port at my insistence and effort. And after that, I think Paradip port has always gone to a railway officer. So I don't mind it. I mean, to tell Dhruv, I don't mind it. The second point I want to make is there is a difference between industry and infrastructure. In industry, if you do 100% utilization of your capacity, I congratulate you. In infrastructure, if you make 100% utilization,
it's not right.
Very worried. By all standards, it should not be utilized more than 60 to 70%. Thank you.
Santosh, your video is not,
I know, but
we are not able
I'm
to
not
see
able
that.
to do anything about it.
ऐसा एक बार ही आप webcam को off करके on करिए, just your webcam only. Meanwhile, we are raising the poll questions. Audience, please be ready and please be very, very quick in answering the poll questions. So the question is on your screen. Do you think Indian port sector is getting consolidated? You have very simple options, yes or no. Do you think Indian port sector is getting consolidated? And people who are watching the program on YouTube can comment your views in the comment section. Do you think Indian port sector is getting consolidated? Yes or no? So we have the answers now. Audience, I will only be giving you 30 seconds to vote. So please stay active during the entire session. I'm closing the poll now. The answer is on your screen. 81% of our viewers feel that Indian port industry is getting consolidated, whereas 19% feels no. So 81% feels yes, the industry is getting consolidated. So, now we are open question. We are open for the views and to make it more precise, I like to know what major ports, what role major ports to play given the government wants to monetize assets.
I'll start with my comments over here. I think government did a fairly good job right from almost 40, 50 or 100 years back when they started with these major ports. So, that was the first mover, wherein no major business was there, putting this kind of investments, creating this kind of assets at the strategic location, 12 locations, if you see, it's clearly creating a pearl across Indian shores. So that was the first mover, thereafter, several people came in with their own needs or with as a business model or something like that. Of course, the opportunities are there for many people to develop more. 7,500 kilometers of coastline. No new ports has come in the last 10 years. What's the reason? When we say the port infrastructure is inadequate, then more ports should have come in. It is not coming in because the existing businesses are having a capability to do more or can enhance their capacity from the existing ones. Now, having a consolidation, yes, it's a business model for if somebody is able to see a business through what others cannot. Of course, it makes sense for anyone, for that matter. So I think it happened in several sectors. It happened in airline. It happened in power sector at one point of time. It happened in power sector as well. It happened in steel sector at times. So it is a process. When an economy is growing at such a fast pace, there would be some players who would like to take the first mover advantage. So I think I would rest that, the first mover advantage goes to someone. So you may call it consolidation, or you may call it as a business model. It's purely, it's a perception. I think it's a business model.
Who would like to comment now? You're open. I'm open to anyone. Just Rajiv ji, you like to say something? So your mic is on mute. So
Hello, can I be heard now?
yes.
Okay, so I think every business has this constant consolidation or thing going on. So this is part of the business cycle. So I don't see there is anything. But okay, of course, we have to take care of monopolies, etc. So that aside, I think clearly in India, this sector has seen consolidation taking place in the private sector. But in the government sector, of course, these ports are operating. Government, I don't think in any of the monetization plans that in the monetization pipeline, government has not talked about monetizing the major ports. They have only talked about bringing new concessions through the private sector as operators. But they are going more towards the landlord model, which is the right thing. And that is what is there, which is a mix of both private and public participation, you can say. So I think, and then the government can form a holding company and float it, which will be a great thing because, that will also bring transparency, better operations, because they will be under public scrutiny. So I think in many of the PSUs, even in the telecom sector has been done. It's been done in airports. It's been done in in airlines, all the such transportation sectors, it has been done. Only railways is the last, where at least in the port sector, the operators are private and landlord model has been well established. Whereas in case of railway, where huge amount of budgetary resources are needed for improvement and growth, whether it is in the passenger segment or in the freight segment, there's a lot of work to be done on that. And so I think if they privatize, then it will be very helpful for the economy and improvement in the services. We have seen how services have improved in telecom. I have been part of that journey. I was the pioneer in telecom and then moved into other areas. But then, how from 10 million lines to now we have more than a billion, 1 billion telephones in the country. So we have seen a transformation. We have seen transformation in airline business. So I think similarly in railways, I think government is taking steps. But in port sector, I think it is okay. Means except for some, on the private sector, we have to be careful of monopolies. But otherwise, I think it's a healthy thing.
Santosh, you'd like to give his view, sir?
Yeah, I have a very different view. I think the port sector cannot be consolidated in the real sense until we take a very drastic constitutional decision. I have always failed to understand why ports remained a kind of concurrent subject with both state and if national highways can be all central government, why ports should be both state and central government. Now, what has happened is a major port is defined as a port declared as a major port by notification. And Government of India is perhaps not going to declare many more ports. So the new port development is largely takes place in the private sector. And when that happens, we have 30 states. We have only 9 states with a coastline, which actually belongs to the entire country. And all the more reason it should have been a central union subject and not a central subject. Today, what is happening is you have a port at Suvarnarekha coming up, and only 20 kilometers north, there is another port to come up called Tajpur, because there are 2 different states. I was building a port at Vizhimjam, and 50 kilometers down south, Government of India allowed Tamil Nadu to have a port. Of course, that didn't come up for their local resistance, other reasons. Now, we can have a national, holistic balanced view of how many ports, of what capacity, of what kind, if it were all governed by the single government. That's my view.
So we have Mr. Dhruv and Mr. Vinit to make the comment on this.
Yeah, so I'll be
Yeah,
very
Dhruv.
quick. I think consolidation is, I think this is a big challenge for, I think people like Vinit and government and regulators, because I think you're going to see two things. I think consolidation is but natural. As the sector matures, you're going to look at larger and larger platforms emerge. I think we already have in this call itself, we have one or two companies who are going to be those large platforms. I won't name who because then it may be controversial, but there's definitely one company here who is definitely going to be a large platform. But I think that I think it's natural because I think at the end of the day, as the sector grows, you need to have those economy of scale, that network, that end-to-end ability to serve. So in the private sector, I think consolidation is but natural, and especially as the government moves towards a landlord model, I think it will lead to emergence of maybe, my view, 3 to 4 large platform maritime logistics platform players. I definitely, so let me name it. I definitely believe JSW and Adani will definitely be one of those two entities. I think what's important really is that to understand, as Santosh said, is that how is there a level playing field between major ports and minor ports, and the way these two are regulated. So one is, of course, in terms of where these ports are allowed to come up and so on and so forth. But I think even further, I think there has to be, I think a certain degree of commonality in terms of how these two businesses are viewed. Now, the challenge is Vinit views a port very differently from how for example, a Tajpur will be viewed. Because in the end of the day, for Vinit, it's no longer a profit motive, no longer a trust motive. He is under pressure to deliver profitability along with a whole bunch of other responsibilities. But a state government in Bengal, when it wants to develop a new greenfield port, is not really bothered about profitability. It's about social development. It's about other angles. So somewhere down the line, the motive that you are giving Vinit is very different from the motive you are giving a greenfield port. And we are seeing this. We're seeing this in different ports as well. So I think there's a lot of deeper questions on, the level playing field. And I don't think that's necessary about companies. I think that's more about how, the regulator, the state authorities, the port authorities, how are they being viewed? You can go down a landlord model, but in the end of the day, if Vinit has to derive profit versus a state West Bengal state government really more interested in, really developing Tajpur and that district around that area, then I think Vinit is going to have his hands tied behind his back. He can have all the private operators operating within his vicinity, but it's not going to be a level playing field. And I think that's a question that Vinit and a few others should ask.
I would like to see comments from Vinit on this. Vinit.
In this firm itself, there are 3 port operators sitting, so I'm not saying there is so much of consolidation to be worried about. So 3 of them are there, from Dhruv, Arunji and Rajiv. So see, as somebody mentioned, that as the industry grows, this is a cycle, this is a part of the process. This will happen. But of course, there has to be a level playing field. And I would say that an attempt is being made in this direction by the bill which is under consideration, where it is planned that the planning for ports should be holistic, because these are national assets. And so the planning for whosoever makes a port, whether it is state or it is center or it is a private party, the planning has to be keeping all these things in mind, so that these ultimately these are national assets. Even if it is made by any private party, the money comes from the banks. So it is a national asset. So where to put in the money, there has to be a broader planning for this. And I would only wish one thing, that we are at a stage, but we are still. I just see figures and numbers. We do around 1,300 million ton a year. I think single port in China does about that. I think we need to think about to have a place or a port or I saw your question and something about SEZ, FTZ, all these things. We should develop a couple of places, something like that. I think as a nation, we should think that we should have at least 2-3 big places, something matching the capacity, which the bigger ports, be it Rotterdam, 700 million tons, Busan, some 400, 500 million tons. So we are still not thinking in terms of that ecosystem. Whatever is our stage, we are still at a, I'll not say in the baby stage, but in the adolescent stage kind of thing. We are still too mature in the port sector, I would say. So there is a need for, as planners, as thinkers, to find out where we can make 2-3 big ports along the coastline, ports along with the associated entire ecosystem, so that we have something like we have in right across our neighbor. So I think that is something which is to be thought about.
Right, sir. So audience, we will take up another poll question, but before that, we have a audience question. Mr. Ramesh Venkat, he is asking from Mr. Dhruv Kotak. Mr. Ramesh is from Logistics Skill Council, Chennai. Dhruv, his question is, basis the human intensive sector with logistics service providers, users, CHAs, transporters, what are plans for port industry to upskill them with technological interventions, leveraging standards and quality to enhance productivity, an important job creation for the gig workforce?
That's a fab question, and the answer is, to be honest with you, not that much. In fact, I'm a part of the same Logistics Skill Council, even though I'm from the port sector, and I'm one of the, I think, aberrations in that same council. And similarly with the CII piece, and it's actually a bit embarrassing because I think what ends up happening for us in the port sector is we end up being so siloed in our port and talking about what we do within the port, and seldom do we realize that it's about building that broader ecosystem and enhancing the skill capability around that. So I think we've ended up creating more of a mindset till now, which is more of very much within the 4 boundary walls, and we are the gatekeepers, so everyone comes to us. And we lay down the standards and everyone must follow it. So I think that's, it's a bit of a problem with the way we are as port operators. And sorry, I mean, even for the port sectors, whether major or minor, and sorry, no deviation or discrimination here. It's the same across the board, sorry. But what I would say is I think we have a lot to learn. I think these are things that we need to learn from countries like, places like Rotterdam. I think, Rajiv ji and others have worked with Rotterdam, Antwerp, and these port companies based in that part of continental Europe, where they work, and a port's job really is to work like a true ecosystem, a real cooperative environment, and they work with that in mind. And I think that's the first step that we will all need to do. To answer your question very specifically, I think what needs to be done rather than necessarily what is being done, because we aren't doing that much as the port sector, is I think we need to roll out certain, like for example, when we are rolling out port community systems or national logistics platforms, which are being rolled out by the shipping ministry, to give them credit. But I think what needs to be done along with that is to make very comprehensive digital upskilling programs for all the different stakeholders to then connect into this, empower themselves, and make sure that their business becomes easier. So I think the first step has already been taken by the shipping ministry. And I know even companies like Adani have already made massive efforts to work towards creating port community systems. But I think the work really is now going to be to translate that also to a training program for each of the different stakeholders and make sure that they get digitally connected in a more seamless manner. But I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The specific question I think is very embarrassing for all of us. We have a lot of work to do when it comes to broadening that.
And Arun sir, we have question for you also from Mr. Shiva Kumar. He's asking, since JSW Steel is going for expansion in most of the units, how JSW ports are prepared for increased production? Sir, your mic is on mute.
As I said at the beginning of the session, we consider port as one of the raw materials. So as we grow our steel plant capacities, definitely, security of raw material is one part of the growth. So we consider that while making any kind of investments, what are the supply chain systems are there, from where we get the iron ore or coking coal, or how we are going to supply that material to the locations where it is to be produced, or how we are going to export the material. So wherever we are coming up with the capacities, definitely there are plans available and under execution at few places, so that we are not impacted by disruption in the supply chain side. So I think we have planned for all the expansions.
Rajiv ji, we have question from Amit Chaudhary. Will more PPP help in reduction of logistic costs, sir? Will more PPP help in reduction of logistic costs? Amit Chaudhary is asking.
Well, logistics cost, of course, will get reduced if, depending on the requirements of the services by the user industries. So I think keeping that in mind, ports have been planning, whether in the private sector or in the major ports, requirements of the future, and steps are being taken. Only thing is that the PPP model as such needs some improvement, which we have been working in the industry to make sure that the PPP model is more robust and creates and brings in that kind of excitement and participation in the major ports. Things like flexibility in the agreements, in charging the tariff, etc., which should be left to the port operator, like in the case of non-major ports. All of that needs to be brought in so that the investment can get the due returns. Because what we have seen in the last 10 years is that many of these PPP operators are not very successful, except where they are working for example, Essar working for Essar Steel, or JSW working for JSW Steel type of things, where there is a captive cargo, and that there it is fine, but then many of the independent PPP operators have been struggling. So I think government is seized of this situation, and they are taking due steps.
Right, sir. So audience, the poll question is on your screen. The question is, should we have port, waterways, railways, surface transport under one ministry for better synergy and optimum usage of resources? The question is, should we have port, waterways, railways, and surface transport under one ministry for better synergy and optimum usage of resources? You have got three options: agree, unsure, disagree. Currently, we know all the ministries are different for ports, for roads. Here we're talking about port, waterways, railways, and surface. People watching on YouTube, please post your views in the comment section, and you can also post your questions there. We will take it up. So we have the answers. Please be very, very quick. Should we have ports, waterways, railways, and surface transport under one ministry for better synergy and optimum usage of resources? Okay, so we have got the results. Results on your screen. 69% says agree, 10% says unsure, and 21% says disagree. So majority, 69% feels yes, all these should be under one ministry. Open for comments from the panelist.
I strongly disagree, because I think it will create an unmanageable monolith. I don't think that each of these ministries are very large. We have people like Santosh ji, Vinit ji, who have been working in the government. They know how challenging it would be if all these ministries are merged together. In fact, we need to open up these industries which are still under control, like railways and ports, and also airlines to some extent, so that they can, because at the end of the day, it's a private service. You have consumers and you have to give good service. So if you have too much of regulation, it does not help. And if it is one ministry, then it will become too much of centralization. And it may not be possible physically for one ministry to handle these, though in many countries it is like that. But I still would not go for it. That's my view.
Arunji, before I come to you, I know you like to answer it first, but first I would like to have view of Mr. Vinit and Mr. Santosh. Vinit, sir.
Yeah. See, but the answer, before people could vote in, I will give the answer. It is a sort of natural choice. People love to say that, but what they want to probably mean, the intent behind this answer is not that they should be under one ministry. What they want to say is that there should be a better coordination and planning of planning of resources, planning of assets, planning of all. There should be a better integration. What they mean, to which I also agree that there has to be a better integration, which I told initially also, that Gati Shakti which has come. And now we are living in an age of information technology where everything is on a platform. So you can integrate, you can do that. So there is no need to create a structure for that. So, as Rajiv ji said, that it will be a big monolith. So I don't think there is a need to have a structural arrangement of that kind. But of course, what the intent of the question is that there should be a better coordination among the various ministries in the same, in the logistics sector, I can say, that there should be a better coordination amongst them for better delivery. That to that extent, I agree. But yes, there is no need for having a common ministry or creating a structure for it.
Santosh ji, I'd like to have your view, then Arun ji and Dhruv.
I think it is more an issue of governance, of the structural governance of the central government. It's not about increasing the regulation or centralizing the decision making. It is about how this department should be positioned and made to operate. I would think that we have a concept of ministry, we have a concept of department. You can have one ministry of infrastructure or transport, whatever you call it, and you can have various departments of railways, department of ports, and each department is headed by a secretary. It's nothing new. These kind of structures did exist and do exist in the government. I would strongly support it, because when I was building Dhamra port, I must have gone to the railway board office 40 to 50 times just to make the policy of private participation formalized, that we will get a proportionate revenue share. And I used to answer very unique questions like, okay, you will build a port, now you will take away some traffic of Haldia and some traffic of Paradip. So what does the railway get additionally? It gets the same cargo, only divided among three ports. I would answer them, look, it will be in the beginning like that. But when there are three ports and the port capacity ultimately increase, you'll get more cargo from all the ports and your overall cargo will increase. But, this kind of understanding was so difficult to establish because at that time, of course, railway budget was also different, and railway was almost an autonomous separate organization. Yeah. I think there's a need to integrate them. I am in support of a single ministry with different departments under a single minister.
So Arunji, we have one agreement and one disagreement. What is your view?
I agree to disagree. So the thing is that it's quite a complex answer. It is not like one shoe fits all sizes. Railway ministry is quite spread out all across India. It is not only related to port. So merging or having a common ministry for all this stuff may not be the answer for that. But as what rightly been picked up by other panelists earlier, having a commonality or having a dedicated resource for port sector within railways or for railway sector within ports probably will a better answer to that. Like there was a company created, IPRCL, that was largely for Indian port railway connectivity. That was for that only. Now, how much power we assign to that, how much of authority we assign to such kind of departments is the key. Are they able to take their own decisions, or they have to go to their respective ministries and take the approval? Then again, instead of taking a one ministry approval, now they have to go for 3 ministry approval. Then the entire efficiency is lost. So what we need essentially is maybe one dedicated team within Railway Ministry for port, or one dedicated team in Port Ministry for railways, and that should answer all the questions, because railway is quite vast and wide. So that you can't have the railway into the port or port into railways. That would be a bit of a challenge. And so far surface ministry is concerned, road and all, same lies for that as what for railways. Road network is quite wide and variety. So linking everything to port may not be very a great thing, but yes, having a specific people dedicated for port will help.
Dhruv, what is your view on this?
So my view is obviously very simplistic, and it's I think it for someone like me, it would be great to have everything under one roof. I'd be able to reduce my time in Delhi and the time in terms of clearances. Just one building mein jaake sab log ko khatam karo na. I mean, frankly, beyond I don't care how practical or impractical it is. Realistically, if I can get things done quicker, I would say let's get things done quicker, and then it becomes easier. I'll have more people like Vinitji to help us solve problems in our sector continuously, not only for a short dispensation. Yeah. So I think from my side, I think it makes sense to have one transportation ministry. I think it would make the overall planning, implementation, execution easier. But again, I think I agree with what Arunji said. I think that's easy to say from my perspective, but I think from people who are far more wizened and who have been through, who are already sitting in positions and who know the system working better, I'm sure probably not as practical. But yeah, from my perspective, I think of course one large building, one monolith, as you said, sir, ideal scenario, everyone's there, makes life easy.
So we have one question from Mr. Vetrival. He's asking view on rigidity of concession agreement, please. How can CA terms, condition, including royalty share, performance clauses remain same for a period of say 30 years, forcing PPP operators to quit? He's from Chennai. So Vinitji, you can answer. I think you're smiling.
All of us are smiling.
Yeah.
See, in principle, I agree with what he's saying. 30 years is a long period. I do not know, but at least a couple of business cycles will pass through this, means one up, one down, something like that. And the issue which he has highlighted is absolutely right. But there is another requirement that when you are going for a contract and you are being government, we have to do it in a transparent manner, which should be not only be transparent but also appear to be transparent. So meeting both these requirements, it has to be within certain broad categories. So as we already discussed, that PPP over the last 10 years has evolved in India, and I must say that port sector is one sector where probably road and road are two sectors where PPP has been at least successful. There are other sectors where PPP has not even taken off. So that way, the credit goes to all this sector that they have at least gone ahead and taken this challenge, and the PPP has started. So I would say the solution or the suggestion would be that we are already doing that. We are trying to modify the concession agreement with keeping as minimum possible fixed and maximum what can be changed according to the market conditions. But this will always be a challenge. I will say there is no clear answer to this. Any contract, there is a challenge. The periods are large, but yes, we are seized of this issue, and the ministry is also already going on for revision in the model concession agreement. to take care of the eventualities. But let me tell you one thing, that no contract, no paper document can be a pakka document. Unfortunately, in the contracting system in the country, what has happened, that from administrators or engineers who used to deal the contract with the contracting parties, now there is a third element into it. Nothing against them, but there is a third element to it, that both sides have their battery of lawyers ready all the time. Right. So this is the crux of the situation. So if an administrator or a port operator and the operator and the port person or whosoever is on the other side, if they sit on the table, I think 90% of the solutions, 90% of the problems can be resolved. The only issue is that we should have that enabling provision in the contract, which we are trying to do. If you see the credit document or World Bank contract documents, I have had the opportunity to learn somewhere about these and also was associated with it. They have these kind of frameworks. Yes, if a dispute arises, there is a third person. They name it also upfront in the contract. He should be consulted. His guidance should be taken. If not, then there are at least 2-3 layers of where you can reconcile in a situation which is arranged, which is unforeseen. No contract can foresee everything. It is not if Gita or Bible that it can see the entire what is going to happen in the next 100 years or even 30 years. No contract can see. There has to be that element of flexibility and a mechanism to deal with those changes, which we are attempting to make, and the ministry also is trying to do. We have learned from this in the last 10 years, and we are trying to make that effort in the.
So I think well explained. I'm raising one poll question now because I think we all agree with Vinitji. So my next question is, audience on your screen, is hub and spoke model ideal for last mile connectivity, like one large port with few small port in vicinity? Your options are very simple, yes or no. Is hub and spoke model ideal for last mile connectivity? People watching on YouTube, please post your answers in the comment section. Is hub and spoke model ideal for last mile connectivity? So we have the answers now. Answer on your screen. 71% says yes, while 21% says no. I open the floor for comments. 71% says yes, 21% says no.
I think, Monica, any port today, if I have to go for a greenfield port, will not cost less than $1 billion. It is more or less like going for dredging, going for breakwater, going for building the berth and all. So the volume has to be there to justify those kind of investments. Now those volumes will come only if there is no major other bigger port near the vicinity. Otherwise, if everybody starts building those kind of bigger ports, everybody will suffer. So I think hub and spoke model is a decent one. Now, how do we structure it? Who should be doing it? Whether some state government should be building that kind of bigger port, or central government should be doing it, or a large corporate should be doing it. That can be discussed and debated upon. Or it could be a joint venture between all the major other smaller users, because still waterways are still the cheapest source, the best source to move the cargo. So I think hub and spoke model will have its own merits, but then to make it in practice, there has to be an anchoring agency to make it work. I create a large port, and if I ask everybody else to build a smaller port nearby me, at the end of the day, they're dependent on me. So I can always, take advantage of the situation. So probably that's where, everybody wants to build their own port. We'll see a situation wherein, there are a lot many larger ports would be there. If that is the case, then not major cargo, and everybody would go to the stress. So that's what my view is about.
Anyone else like to make a comment?
Yeah. I would like to just clarify that, all of us know it. Hub and spoke doesn't really refer to smaller ports nearby. It's not a criterion of distance. It is more a criterion of depth. I remember when I was starting construction of the Dhamra port, we had some forum where my batchmates were chairman of Kolkata port, which one of your predecessors, Vinit. We were face to face, and he said, "Look, Kolkata is the mother port of India, right? You should know that." And I said, "Yes, Dhamra is like a daughter port, but maybe the mother vessel should come to Dhamra, and the daughter vessel should go to Kolkata, and then we can have a good synergy." And what I believe that, not only West Bengal but Bangladesh, they have a problem of debt. So there's nothing wrong if there is a hub port in Dhamra or somewhere where it is already there in the container movement. I mean, there are feeder vessels and liners, and there is a port in Singapore, Sri Lanka, now Vizhimjam, where this hub and spoke was. Yes, I agree with Arunji that you can't have a port and smaller ports nearby. It can be there in Gujarat, where building a port doesn't cost so much. Because smaller ports depend and need neither a breakwater. There is such a large protected sea coast around where the two gulfs are there. Nor do you need a channel because there is a tidal difference of 6 to 7 meters. But on the eastern coast, you can't build a port in less than 4 to 5,000 crores of rupees, even if you want to start with a single bar. So you can't have the luxury of having too many ports in that sense. But over a period of time, some ports will act as hub ports, and some ports will act as.
Right, sir. Dhruv,
No,
your
I
point,
think,
please.
okay, Dhruv, yeah, please.
Yeah.
So I think, this is, I guess this is the problem when an industry is maturing, right? We are all, the scale and size, what Vinitji just mentioned earlier, is we're all scaling up, and the segment is scaling up, and we've still not reached global standards yet in terms of size and scale. And I think while that emerges, I think one thing that's very interesting in India, and I think it's a little bit of a challenge with us all, and I'm going to tease even Arunji a little bit in this, and even Santoshji's former employer. I think the challenge is everyone wants to be the biggest, right? Everybody wants to be number one, biggest in the world, biggest in the country. I think a lot of value can be created when you start providing niche services for a specific, and I must add one thing, logistics, maritime or otherwise, is not telecom, which means that you can't just blanket the entire earth with fiber optic and expect to compete in any geography. Here, your geography is important. Which means that you can be a niche operator in a specific ecosystem and still provide a very valuable service. And I think the moment, well, hopefully young people like myself learn that lesson and, not get into a race of being, number one or the biggest, but focus on providing value add to customers and to industries, to end users. I think there is a lot of potential for hub and spoke. But I think it's a mindset shift away from volumetric and down to niche value-added services. And by the way, I will even attack Vinitji with this. Unfortunately, the PPP framework only looks at volume. They don't look at the fact that let's look at everything is MGT, volume. You need to also enable people to look at smaller businesses, smaller locations, smaller PPP concessions for niche players like myself who are not giant companies like Arunji and, others and Rajivji. I think in the end of the day, I think there's a lot of potential in that. I think it's a mindset shift, which is going to be needed. Maybe we are still growing and we're still maturing, but I still think this mindset shift is more much.
Rajivji, your point, sir.
Yeah, see, I think I agree completely with Dhruv that, at the end of the day, we should be focused on providing the best logistics services. Whether it makes anyone happy or unhappy, whether capital is lost or whatever, that is not the criteria to look at it. Because at the end of the day, the infrastructure has to be created. At one time, and we say, Europe is very advanced in inland logistics, in marine logistics and waterways, etc., etc. And on the other side, we don't want to create. So look at Gujarat. This is the best example where there are more than 40 ports. And there is a hub and spoke model. Each of them, like Santoshi said, that it's a matter of what draft you have and what are. So, somewhere it will be small barges, somewhere something else. And we have seen, I've operated in Canada, we have operated in UK, we have ports and in international waters. We see, that there are small streams in which we have a refinery, which is the second largest refinery in UK, where we have a very small Manchester Canal, which was made 100 years back. Only small, very small product tankers come there, and they are taking the material out of the refinery and going. So, hub and spoke model is required, and whether money is lost or gained eventually for the person who sets up that facility, it's okay. In infrastructure, people will always have that situation that someone invests and someone else takes the advantage, and consolidation happens later. So I don't think we should be bothered. We should be bothered about service. And same thing has happened in telecom and other places also. And today there are airports everywhere coming up. Now government is thinking about 800-900 airports in the country. So it's like that. Ports also will happen. So you should have small, big, mid-sized, different type of logistic solutions offered to the customers.
Right. Vinit sir, we have a question for you from Mr. Satendra Chadha. He's asking, inland waterways from Haldia to Allahabad used to take 60 days. What is the position now, sir?
See, inland waterways, as of now, the Haldia terminal will be coming up very shortly. And the terminals at Haldia, Sahibganj, they are ready physically, they are ready. The efforts are on to appoint one operator. And then there is Banaras terminal. And then there is facilities at Allahabad. So the major issue in this was dredging, the draft issue, the LAD, which has been taken care to a great extent. And the Waterway Authority has already given contracts for dredging. Major part of it has already been done. I think that the movement should start either early next year on this route. Regular movement should start on from Haldia on this route for National Waterway 1. There is also a great effort going on in promoting the National Waterway 2, which is through protocol route going via Bangladesh. So they are also, being at Calcutta, we are at the cusp of these two waterways, that is National Waterway 1 and National Waterway 2. So both these waterways are slated to gear up in the next, you can say beginning of next year and onwards. And regular movements are expected to happen on both of these waterways.
Right. So we are nearly ending the session, but before I end, I will take up two more poll questions, and I would request panelists to make a very quick comments, and then we will finish the session. Because though I prepared a lot of questions, but through our audience, most of the questions have been covered. I'm raising one poll question on your screen. Should steel industry or power industry invest or spend in port sector for security of raw material? So, audience, you have three options: yes, no, unsure. Should steel industry or power industry invest or spend in port for security of raw material? Please be very, very quick in answering. And people watching on YouTube, please post your views in the comment section. Should steel industry or power industry invest or spend in coal sector for security of raw material? So we have the answers now. Answer on your screen. 71% says yes, while 19% says no, and 10% are unsure. So the majority is going with yes, steel or power industry must spend or invest in port sector for security of raw material.
Well, I think we have been the first ones to do this in the country. And I think apart from us, JSW, Reliance, everyone does it. It's a no-brainer.
Rajiv, sir, we agree with you. Arunji?
The only thing is that, but not everybody would be able to spend that kind of money for developing a port sector, depending upon the volumes, SR had volumes, JSW had volumes. So we could justify those kind of investments. So
we're talking
probably,
about large ones.
Yeah. So probably, people who don't have that much of volume can join together in a particular geography and come together.
Yeah.
Or they can buy a certain PPP through in the major ports, and probably they can join hands and make it work for themselves. But one thing which I would like to take out from this poll answer is that certainly people are not happy with the existing port operators. That they want their own security. They are not happy with the port operator. So I'm sorry for that, but then I'm always there to help you out.
I think, let me add to that, Monica, give you a slightly contradictory view. I actually think that it's an inefficient process to, it's the non-core activity for a power producer and a steel producer. And that's probably shameful that we haven't created enough of security for them, whether it's a major port capacity or whether it's a minor port capacity or whether it's a private port operator. I think, frankly, it's a non-core activity as far as an industry is concerned. As long as we should be creating an enabling environment that whether it's through a PPP framework or through any other route. I think this is a natural resource, which is the waterfront and ports. And I think, frankly, just using it as something that gives us security, I think is a scary thought. That just means that our natural resources aren't easily accessible. So, no, I think that should not be the reason. I think the reason should be, if it is, like, as they said, if it's a scaled thing, yes. But just out of security, I think then we should be taking a deep introspective look inwards to see why is it that they feel insecure or worried about not having their own connectivity, which is probably true. But I think we need to then think about it long and hard.
No, but I don't agree with this, because we are not talking about, containers type of cargoes. Here we're talking about cargoes which are needed right into the place where the industry is. And these are very large volumes. So, for example, if you're talking about raw materials of steel, these are like, if there's a 10 million ton steel plant or 15 million ton steel plant, you need 30 million tons of iron ore. It cannot be transported by trucks or by rail or any other means except for port, and it needs a dedicated service which should be in the country. Okay, if you are doing it on the port and then doing, but largely most of the places in the world, these facilities are under the control of the steel plant or the refinery or power. But it is necessary that you have that kind of security. At the end of the day, you are putting lakhs of crores of investment, and for 5,000 crore or 2,000 crores, you're not going to depend on someone else for a port facility. So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, Dhruv, what is your point?
My point is not that you don't do it because of thing. I mean, in the end of the day, absolutely correct. But the point is to go and have a whole port built on the back of even a 10 million, 20 million, whatever is the size of location, because you are afraid. I think that point is.
No, it's not about. No, Dhruv, it's not about being afraid. It's about having a facility as per what is your requirement. Because no one. You see, the complexity is so much that you need that kind of facility to be created for yourself, and it's not a major cost if you have invested so much in the industry in any case.
So we like to have a comment from Mr. Santosh. He's been raising hands. Santosh, sir.
Yeah.
I think it's perfectly natural for the industry to have a sense of raw material security by having control of the port operation through which it gets, if that volume is substantial. But the other question is, as Dhruv correctly said, a waterfront is a limited, non-replaceable national asset, and that asset should be optimally used. So to answer that question specifically, should steel industry invest in ports? The answer is yes. But should it be a captive port? The answer is a captive berth, perhaps yes, if your requirement is something like 10 to 15 million tons. But a captive port, perhaps no, because with the core infrastructure of a captive port like a channel and a breakwater and a seafront occupation, you can create a port capacity of 100 million tons or 200 million tons, which can be better optimally used in the national interest for so many other industries and so many other cargo. And why confine it to one ownership for his sense of security? So there is plus and minus on both sides.
Yeah.
Arun, sir.
No, I believe I made my comments so that,
Okay.
It is very difficult for any particular
So we
industry
will
to
move
invest
on.
that.
Right, sir. We will move on to the last poll question and then we will end the session because already we are running on overtime. So our next question is on your screen. SIMS, CARATAR, BIS standard, QCOs, etc. Are customs geared up with the adequate know-how? Simple options, yes or no. SIMS, CARATAR, BIS standard, QCO, which is quality control orders, etc. Are customs geared up with the adequate know-how? Audience, please vote very, very quickly. Meanwhile, our audience are voting. I'd like to give thanks to Shushrit Mohanty, Jayant Chonekar, S. Mandal, Satyendra Chadha, Samir Bhatnagar, Nihal Kotapatti, Vikram Singh. They have been quite active on our YouTube in comment section. Then Krishna, Mani, Ramani. Thank you all for being here and posting so many comments and questions. So we have got the answers now. Answer on your screen. So 65% of our audience feels no, the custom is not having adequate know-how or knowledge about SIMS, CARATAR, BIS standard QCOs. So comments, please. So this is last question of the day. I'd like to have your comments on this. Who will start first?
I think Dhruv or Mr. Vinit Kumar, I believe.
See, I don't think that, customs has been working on the Z platform for a very long time. To say that I don't think they don't have the know-how. In the container segment, everything is being done by them online. So I don't think there is any gap in their ability or capacity to adapt to this. There might be certain systems which are new, which they are yet to adopt or which they are yet to take over. That might be the issue for a particular system, but generally they are quite comfortable and happy with all these kinds of systems. So in container segment, we see everything is now online. So I don't think that there's any reason that they are not conversant or lack of capacity to handle this.
Yeah, Dhruv.
You're on mute.
Sorry, very, very similar point that Vinitji made. We've seen them work very closely when it comes to, both the national logistics platform, the port community system. They've been very proactive. And I think it's very simple. I think, customs also is a large body. And I think if you look at what happens in Delhi, plus that international, the fact that today customs is working very closely with global other customs. And there is a lot of exchange of standards, information, understanding. There's a lot of work going on along that. Now, I will admit that probably the time it takes to disseminate some of that knowledge, information, understanding from Delhi down to every single location will take time. And therefore, there will be challenges that people will face. But having said that, to say that they're not aware of it, they're not applying it, they're not incorporating it, I think would be a bit harsh. So I think while we all like to make customs the perfect, sort of target and punching bag, I think we will be quite surprised with the degree of adoption and I would say not only digitization but adoption of different standards. They are quite ahead. So I will probably disagree with this.
Yeah, even I agree with Dhruv that I believe they're doing a fabulous job. Like the way they adapt to the changes and the kind of knowledge they accumulate immediately, it's fantastic. So that's what.
Rajiv ji and Santosh ji, your last comments, please.
I don't really like to comment on this because I don't have any personal experience of it, but having worked in government, I can assure you that IT or digital processes are not friends to the government. They quickly adapt, and where they cannot, they can outsource it and soon be a problem.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think the government has really moved on, I think, and they are quite savvy on the IT front. COVAX, our system of monitoring the COVID situation, and that is testimony. Nowhere in the world you can get a vaccination and same time get updated. Your certification is there. So I think IT is something which in India we have adopted very well, whether in the private sector or the public sector. So it's a question of will. Wherever we feel we need to do something, we come up with good results. So I think we are okay.
So with this, I hope viewers you have enjoyed the session. I've gained a lot of knowledge. I would like to end the session and would like to thank our panelists, starting from Mr. Santosh Mohapatra, IAS, retired advisor and consultant, former chairman director, Paradip, Dhamra and Vizhimjam ports, Mr. Vinit Kumar, chairman, Syama, Prasad, Mookerjee port, Mr. Arun, Maheshwari, joint managing director and CEO, JSW Infrastructure, Mr. Rajiv, Agarwal, operating partner, infrastructure, Essar, and MD of Essar Ports Limited, Mr. Dhruv, Kotak, Managing Director of GM Baxi Group. Viewers, a recorded version of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Metalogic PMS. Please do not miss to subscribe. All webinars reports will be available on mymetalogic.com at only 500 rupees per month basis. We will meet soon with a new webinar next month. Meantime, wishing you a very happy Diwali and happy holidays. Till then, take care and goodbye.
Thank you. Very, very well conducted, I must say.
Extremely well.
Thank you, Rajiv sir. Yeah. Thank you, Santosh sir.
Yes.
Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day. Nothing in life is done. It's just waiting to become better. Better India. Better every day.
Go to mymetalogic.com. On the top left, click on Subscribe. Click on Subscribe Now. You are now on the card page of Metalogic subscription. Quantity refers to number of months. Change it to from 1 to 12. Click on Update Card. The subscription amount will be calculated on number of months selected. For 1 month, it is 500 rupees. For 12 months, it is 6,000 rupees. Click on Proceed to check out. Fill the billing details and click on Place Order. Now you can choose your mode of payment. You have just made a right choice. Thank you for subscribing to mymetalogic.com.